Iran's foreign minister has denounced the United States' support for Israel's atrocities against Palestinians.
The United States, particularly the current administration, is an accomplice to all the crimes that the Zionist entity has committed. All destructions, all mass killings, all aggressions have been committed with the blatant support and blind cooperation of the United States. We have seen once again in the so-called deal of the century that those who believed that the United States could be a broker for peace were badly mistaken.
Mohammad Javad Zarif described the Israeli regime as the single most serious threat to human rights and global peace. He also pointed to the U.S. assassination of Iran's top commander, Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, and condemned Washington and Tel Aviv for resorting to terrorism to advance their agenda. Zarif was speaking at a webinar hosted by South Africa on the occasion of International Quds Day. A number of other dignitaries and prominent activists also participated in the event, including South Africa's Parliament Speaker Baleka Mbeki and grandson of the country's late anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela. And now joining us for this news review is Harry Vox, investigative journalist out of New York, and Max Igan, radio host and political commentator, joining us from Brisbane, Australia. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. I guess we'll start there in Brisbane with you, Max. Nice to have you back on Press TV. Your initial thoughts on this?
Look, it's disgraceful, the actions that the United States has taken in supporting Israel in its suppression of Palestine. I've been saying for many, many years that Palestine is the greatest moral dilemma that we face in the world today. And if we fail to heal the situation in Palestine, then the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. And when you look at the world today, and you look at the reactions that the governments have taken in response to this COVID pandemic, and I would suggest, a lot of people would say they've overreacted. I would say no, they haven't overreacted. What they've done is they've planned this from the beginning in order to lock the rest of the world down. What we're seeing in Western countries now is Palestine is coming to their own countries, checkpoints, all of this stuff that we're seeing. The way of Palestine will be the way of the world if people fail to address this moral dilemma, which could be healed very easily. And we will continually scream at Israel, but we will fail to recognize that it is our politicians in our own countries that are supporting this atrocity. And everything you just said about the United States, all of the atrocities that have happened there has happened with the full support of the United States. In fact, it couldn't happen without the United States support, but not only the United States, my country as well, many other countries are supporting this atrocity. And it is the greatest moral dilemma we face. And it is such an honour to come here and to be asked to speak on our Quds Day as well. It's just something that we need to pay attention to. It's been an incredibly frustrating issue for so many people, but again, I think it's because the focus has been misdirected. We've been failing to look at those who are supporting this abomination and this affront against humanity, which is the situation in Palestine. So, yeah, it's a very, very serious situation, brother, and it's great that we have our Quds Day to be able to try to get this message out to the world, at least on this one section a year anyway.
Thank you, Max. And Harry, I'd like to swing over to you and welcome you to the program. Now, Harry, we know that the West, particularly the U.S., Australia, the UK, they were all staunch supporters with abandon of apartheid South Africa. But I guess all that changed. So my question to you, why hasn't it changed when it comes to Palestinians? Why is history so far, when it comes to the West, not on the Palestinian side?
Well, when you just look at the way things are presented in the Western media, for example, Khamenei's latest statement, which essentially was completely factually true. He said that it was an unequaled crimes against humanity, check. A cancerous tumor, well, of course, anybody who's got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a brain will tell you that. And that it was created by Western and Jewish corporate owners. Well, that's true too. When they present these facts in the Western press, like CNN and NBC, they present this stuff as if it's crazy, as if it's loony stuff. But the thing about it is that Western viewers have to remember is that nobody's watching Western media anymore. So what it is they're projecting this fake idea of everybody. They're misrepresenting everybody's truth. They're saying that it's crazy. What we have to do is we have to just get on the same page. I'm discovering that in the United States, this solid support, so-called, for Zionism, not so solid, especially among the people who are having a hard time putting food on their plates. So you ask a staunch supporter. Yeah, they say that the support for Israel and Zionism, well, it may be wide, but it's not very deep. And I'll tell you, we have to start pricking the bubble of it, and you'll see it pop very quickly. So I think the days are numbered, and I think their grip on the minds of people is a fictional construction, and I think it's actually pretty easy to break. So I could talk a little bit about more, but I don't want to hog up too much time unless you want me to continue.
We actually do. I'm going to come back right back to you in a sec. Max, I'm going to put the second question to you. Now, the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, said that they don't care anymore for a one-state solution or a two-state solution at this point. They just want all Zionists to pack up and go back to wherever they came from and just leave us Palestinians be. My question to you now, what has driven so many Palestinians to a point where they no longer have faith in living side by side with Zionists?
Well, how could you, after everything that's been done to them? I mean, you've got the people in Gaza are kept in a collective prison for the last, over 10 years. They've just been kept in this walled-in population, which is child abuse. I mean, when you look at the population of Gaza, you've got nearly 2 million people there. Over half the population is children. If they ever cry out for any dignity, they get shot, they get called terrorists. They just get abused by everybody. They've had no respect from anybody in the world, let alone the people of Israel. And you look in West Bank, I mean, sure, in Gaza they're walled in, and it's an open-air prison, but at least they've got some freedom of movement within that prison. West Bank, they've got checkpoints everywhere. You can't do anything. It's horrendous. I mean, the amount of abuse that they've had their water stolen from them, they had their food stolen from them, they've never been recognised. Everything that Israel says about Israel, when it says that Palestinians will not recognise Israel's right to exist, no, it's Israel will not recognise Palestine's right to exist. Everything they've done has been to oppress the Palestinian people. Every so-called peace process they've gone through has always been on Israeli terms. Half the time the Palestinians aren't even invited to the conference to have any say in what their future will be. How could you be a Palestinian and have gone through anything that they've gone through in the last 10 years and have any faith in anything Israel is going to say to you? I mean, it's an exercise in stupidity even thinking of doing that. I mean, how many times can you be repressed? How many times can you be lied to? How many times can you have the boot come down on you and have promises withdrawn from you to just keep going back to the table? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, all these people want to do is live their lives in dignity, live like any other country, live in a peaceful country. And I've been there, and I went there, and I saw the people. I stayed there for 10 days. This bed of terrorists, hot bed of terrorists. I ran around Gaza Strip with a video camera for 10 days. I snuck in there, didn't even tell anybody I was coming. And when Hamas found out that I was in there, they asked me to please come in and see them the next day to explain my presence in their country. If I'd done that in Israel, they would have arrested me and thrown me in jail, done it in any country. And then when I left Gaza Strip, Hamas actually provided me a ride to get me back to Cairo safely. Not bad for a terrorist organisation when I'd snuck into their country illegally. So you go in and look at the people on the ground and first-hand in there. It's a bunch of children mainly screaming out to be recognised. How could they possibly trust Israel in anything that they do, or the West in anything they've said, when nothing has ever come through for these people? They're just used as cannon fodder, used for weapons testing, and just forgotten about by the rest of the world. And like I said, it is the greatest moral dilemma that we face. And we could heal this today if the people of the world would simply wake up to themselves and address our own politicians that are supporting this.
Thank you, Max. And Harry, go ahead, buddy. Your final thoughts with you.
Well, to second what Max just said, you have to remember that very few people in the West, very few people in Washington, and politicians, senators and congressmen, they wouldn't care about this state unless there was money and privilege that was conferred upon them for doing so. So they used to call the word used to be called bribery, right? But that's actually not the appropriate word, because the term bribery implies that the person you're bribing wouldn't ordinarily do it unless they received the bribe. That's not what's going on. This is a willing payoff system of payoffs, a willing system of bribery where the U.S. politicians give $38 billion to Israel. Israel takes a small portion of that to feed back to the U.S. congressmen and senators, which are basically parasites. Parasites. That's what you have to. That's how you have to look at an American politician who receives money from Israel. They're a parasite, basically. So it's a circle. You see how this works? A circle of money, where the money, they give them $38 billion, they funnel a little bit of back to bribe, but it's not bribe, just pay off, right? Pay off the parasite in Washington. And then the parasite in Washington just keeps on giving more to Israel. Isn't that a lovely system, right? So what we have to do is we have to break this system of bribery or payoffs, if you will, and you'll find that the support for Israel will fall very quickly, because nobody cares about a xenophobic, violent country who's shooting little children, killing them by the thousands. Nobody cares. They only care because they're getting paid off. And as far as the media goes, it's an insult and a slap in your face. I mean, we had people like John Mersheimer, who wrote an article about the grip that the Jewish lobby has around the necks of Washington, right? Then you had the main neocon, Richard Pearl, come up there on the news and say, oh, there's these people that are saying that Israel has influence in Washington. Have you ever heard of such a crazy thing? I mean, come on. As long as they keep on putting out absolute rubbish like that, you know, no one's going to believe that in a half of a second. Of course, Israel has influence. They own it. They control it. They own every single congressman, every single senator, every single entity in Washington and in the mainstream media. They're all these Zionist organizations, and I don't even like to use the word Zionist or Israeli, because they're not Israeli, and they don't care about Zion. They're about Jewish supremacism, Jewish privilege. So that's actually the correct term to use. Zionism is like the word imperialism. It implies that you care about the entity. These people don't care about Zion. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't Israeli. He wasn't a Zionist. He made his name from supremacism, from privilege, the privilege that we have built into our system that confers privilege, power, money, and media attention to Jews, because they're the chosen people.
Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us on the program. Harry Vox out of New York and Max Igan, they're joining us from Brisbane. And viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your Press TV's News Review. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.